Hello, I'm Scott, and today I'll be unboxing the Japanese physical Nintendo Switch release of Ever 17/Never 7 Double Pack, which is a visual novel collection released by Majors. So this Japanese physical release of the game does feature English language support, which I'll go into more detail later. So to start off with, we'll take a closer look at the outer packaging. First of all, you'll notice that the game cover is split between the two games. So on the top half of the packaging, we have visuals for Ever 17. In the middle, we then have text saying Ever 17/Never 7 Double Pack. And then below that, we have the visual for Never 7. Moving on to the spine, you'll notice text that simply says Ever 17/Never 7 Double Pack with the Majors logo and the Zero logo towards the bottom of the spine. Moving on to the back cover, you'll notice a wealth of Japanese text, but there's not really anything here to worry about. So the top of the box is basically a quick blurb of what you can expect from this product. And then underneath that, we have a synopsis referring to the Ever 17 game. And then below that, we have the synopsis for Never 7. And then in between those two synopses, we have a couple of screenshots from the game, as well as the Zero ratings for each individual title. And then below that is the usual technical details we have for Nintendo Switch games. In this case, this particular game is compatible on Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch Lite consoles, and is playable in handheld, docked, and tabletop mode. And it's of course only one player, as it is a visual novel. Now that we've sped through the unwrapping of the cellophane wrapping, let's take one final tour around the box. And then once we open the box, we can see the inside, which, as you can see, there isn't really much to see here. There is some inside artwork of what looks like some kind of mysterious machine. That's my assumption at least, but it is very dark and very difficult to notice, especially trying to pick it up here through the case. And then towards the bottom, you'll notice the Nintendo Switch cartridge, which is pretty standard but also very simplistic and basic, with the fact that it just has text saying Ever 17 Never 7 Double Pack. So nothing really exciting there, but all the goodness is in the artwork on the covers. Now, as I mentioned before, this physical Nintendo Switch release of Ever 17 Never 7 does feature English language support, and you need to actually change the game configuration settings from Japanese to English upon first boot. So as you can see here, both games are on the single cartridge and there's no additional download required. So once you've popped the cartridge into your console, you'll then be able to see the two icons and choose the game that you wish to select. And then once the game has booted, it will boot automatically into Japanese text, which is interesting, as most games that have English language support will look at the console system language and boot up that same language if it's available. So this is the first Nintendo Switch game that I've owned where I need to manually change it from Japanese to English. But once you've made that change, as long as you've got that save data present on your memory card or on internal storage, it will always boot up in that selected language. So here's a demonstration. If you go to the configuration menu and then scroll down to the third option, which is language, you can then scroll through the various different languages. And then once you get to English, hit confirm and then save your game, or save the settings. And then once you start the game, it will be displayed in English text localization. And of course, this is the same English text localization that is available on the Nintendo eShop in Europe and America, which is good to have. And of course, that process also applies to Never 7. So upon booting Never 7, go down to the configuration menu and then scroll down to the third option and then press right to change it to English, press A to confirm, and then away you go, off to experience the story of Never 7 with English text language support. So that's pretty much what you can expect from the physical Japanese Nintendo Switch release of Ever 7/Never 7 Double Pack, which is available in Japan for the Nintendo Switch.